So great evening. I'm so thrilled to be with everybody. And again, of course, our topic is on getting your time back tonight. So we are going to be diving into some time management skills, techniques, and tricks, as well as some organizational stuff. I don't want to be up here sitting here talking the entire time. So I'm going to do as much as I can to get everybody involved. After each topic, we're going to stop and open it up to the group. So if you have any questions, comments, experiences, or stories that are relatable, we would love to hear from you guys. Okay. So if you go ahead and look in the chat, I'm going to throw up basically a thought jogger real quick before we dive in. Okay. So I just sent that. If you can see that, I'm going to go around the room really quickly, just based on the way my camera is set up. And I would love to hear from everybody. So if you want to share with us either one of your biggest time flaws or roadblocks right now, or if you have a really good trick that's related to organization or time. So, Kimon, I believe you go by Kim. Is that fair to call you? I heard Patty call you that.
Kimon.
Okay. So Kimon, would you like to start us off with either one of your big time roadblocks or a trick that you've learned with time?
I get lost in the email. Oh, what about this? And I follow it on and an hour's gone. Yeah.
Yep.
I have no roadblocks to try and fix it.
Anybody else get caught up in that?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll definitely dive into that. Matt, would love to hear from you. What is a time roadblock or a tip or trick that you use?
I would say probably the biggest roadblock is procrastination. Ooh. So that to me is like my kosher kryptonite. And so the way it is, and not three doors down either. So that to me is definitely a problem. And the biggest flaw is the fact that I don't get everything done when I should have. There's only 24 hours in a day. The biggest time trick is Jewish guilt, because it kills me from the inside. It forces me to do what I really don't want to have to do. And I get my shit together, and then I feel better to ease the guilt.
There you go. So I'm gonna go with procrastination from what you said there. Okay, so we're definitely gonna touch on that. But just keeping the ball rolling real quick, because I really want to dive into this. So Patty, would love to hear same thing for you. What is either a time roadblock or a trick that you've learned?
Well, actually, it's kind of disorganization when I'm trying to find this and that. You know, I spend more time trying to find things than doing the productive things. I mean, I'm pretty productive. I do feel like sometimes between calls, I used to go, well, I only have a half hour, but now I use those times. But I would say disorganization is my biggest issue.
Okay, beautiful. We're going to come back to that. Those are some important points. Miles, you are next, my friend. So I think you kind of get the point, but a couple people just hopped on. So again, guys, those that just hopped in, we are going around and asking if you can answer one of these questions. Either one, what is your big time obstacle or roadblock? Or if you have a trick that would be advantageous for somebody else to hear. So Miles, I'm going to pass it to you.
Yeah. Something that I think I do as a trick, but ends up being a roadblock is I'll say between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m., this is what I'm doing. And then around 8:30, I open up my email and I see a request came in and I'm like, oh, I could do that really quickly. That's going to be easy. And then suddenly it's 11 a.m. and I didn't do everything that I planned on doing between 8 and 10.
Beautiful. Shiny objects, right? We all have those. So we're going to touch on that for sure. Jen, I know you're driving right now, so if you can't answer this, just go ahead and pass it. But if you could answer either the roadblock or a trick or tip that you've learned with time.
Well, as you can see, since I am driving, I have a hard time saying no to things. And so I wanted to stop by the H7 social, and it cut me really close on time. One thing I typically do to try and help, though, is I have everything on my calendar. So even if it's personal things that I'm doing, I try and add that to my calendar so that I know what I need to do. And one of the last things I do for the day is go through what my calendar looks like for tomorrow so that I can plan out as much as possible. So
beautiful. We're actually going to touch on all three of those things. Okay. So I'm so glad you brought that up. Sorry, I muted myself. Jacqueline, would love to hear from you. So either a roadblock, an obstacle, or a tip or a trick you've learned over time.
A tip or trick that I've learned over time that's really useful for me is to start my morning off early and get all of my personal things out, my house cleaning, my reading, my studying, anything that's personal for me. I start early in the morning and get that done. And so the remainder of my day can be for work and other responsibilities. What I'm short on is not building in for the unexpected, like a child calling that needs something, or anybody, just a phone call that is emergency.
Beautiful. I hope you guys caught that, because that is probably one of the most valuable tips that I've seen in a pattern for successful people. So I want to read that back just so if you guys missed that. So what she's saying is that she spends her time on the important things or the things that are more personal to her in the morning so that she can start her day and her routine off properly, have that time, get those things knocked out, and then focus on all the other stuff. That is a huge tip. Thank you so much for sharing. Ashley, you're next on my screen. So I think you got the questions by now.
Yes, I do. I've been thinking about this since the first person you called on, so I'll be prepared. I would say distraction. If it's not like like something in my environment, like a child, it's like a mental distraction. Like I'll write a sentence and then be like, oh, wait. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like focus. So that's my problem.
Shiny objects. Again, very relevant to most people. We're going to touch on that. Okay. Jay, you're up next, my friend.
I guess similar to Big Papa over here. I would say procrastination, which I guess leads to doing like just enough, which I guess just enough leads to not doing enough. And then I guess for a time trick, I guess to like combat against that would be like starting strong. So like as soon, like set yourself up to be ahead.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So we're gonna touch on both of those as well. Awesome stuff. You guys are killing it so far, and we're just getting started. Danny, you are next.
So to piggyback off those two, my thing is procrastination also. I think it's because I work better under pressure. I guess, I don't know, but I do write things down on the whiteboard. That is definitely helpful to keep me on track, or even if I'm already on track and I just see it, it's like, okay, you have to do this, you have to do this, let's go. And it's not with everything. It's just, sometimes it's just like stupid little things, like it's just things I just don't want to do. And I'll just procrastinate. My organization's been pretty good lately. Thank God. I think that's what's keeping me kind of like here instead of down here is, if I'm procrastinating, but I'm like, okay, I need to know, I know what I have to do and I have it written down in order from, what's the most important to not. That's been helping.
Beautiful. We're going to come back to that. You touched on a couple things there, all relevant to our discussion for tonight. So thank you for sharing. Oh, I thought I lost you. Sorry, the screen shifted. And one little tidbit that I have been studying a lot lately is that top performers actually do even better under pressure. So I want you to note that, and we'll come back to that. My screen got changed up a little bit now, so bear with me. But Taylor.
Okay. I severely underestimate how long it takes me and my children to get ready, like especially to like leave the house in the morning or for anything. What I try to do is like that I know it's a problem, so I try and start at least an hour earlier than I normally would. Because I'm like, oh, I can do that in 10 minutes. And then 30 minutes later, I'm like, oh, I'm not even halfway done. So that's my biggest problem.
Perfect. So we are going to touch on that as well. Love that. Marcelo, you are up next, my friend. And I'm not sure if you saw the question. So if you could just pick one of the two, basically the question is, what is one of your time roadblocks, or what is a time related tip or trick that you've picked up throughout life? You're muted. Oh, there he is. 1 second, he said. While you're getting that, Marcelo, I'm going to pass it over to Angela real quick. So Angela, if you could answer the same, if you have one time roadblock or a time related tip or trick or organizational tip or trick that you've picked up over time.
Okay, so I've picked up the whole time blocks, right, method, and I've been implementing it. But what I find is, just like everyone else, I get distracted because a customer needs this or someone needs this, and I want to answer right away. I'm very customer experience oriented. So I've been actually trying to figure out, how when you're meditating and if you lose your focus, you focus on your breathing and it gets you back. I'm trying to figure out what's my thing like that I can do to bring me back and on schedule with my time blocks, but I haven't figured it out yet. So
I love that. And thank you so much for sharing. So I don't have this in our discussion for today. And Taylor, you're going to laugh at me right here, but if you could find an anchor or a totem, and I'd be more than happy to discuss this with you, on a call or something like that. But by the way, I have one for myself, and you mentioned meditation. This is what I use when I meditate. It looks really simple. It's this little ergonomic clay thing. It just fits into my hand. And I've just become so conditioned over time that just by that kinesthetic, by touching it, it automatically puts me into that state. So I would recommend getting an anchor or a totem. And again, we can talk about that later. Marcelo, are you good now, my friend? I saw you come in. Oh, it looks like you're good. The floor is yours.
So one big thing for me is mismanaging my scheduling is a big hurt for me. I tend to misplace a lot of things when it comes to doctor appointments or, scheduling with, any type of meeting with others. I would tend to forget it, which is a big flaw on my part. It would obviously hurt me looking back at those moments where obviously there'll be crucial moments for me to partake in those things. So that's something that hurts me a lot that I'm trying to manage on.
Beautiful. So just mismanaging time sometimes, and we're absolutely going to cover that one. So last but not least, Rathan, I'm going to pass it over to you, my friend.
Thanks, Keegan. I guess one flaw that I have is definitely getting distracted. Social media. I'll be trying to focus and doing my work, and then something pops up on my phone, and I'm just on that for the next 20-30 minutes. So what I tried doing is I found out there's like apps that help block that for a certain time period. So I downloaded that, but of course I definitely think I could get better at that.
Thank you for sharing. Great stop. So guys, everybody, thank you so much for sharing either your tip or your obstacle. We're going to go ahead and just dive right in. Again, for those that kind of jumped in last minute, there is an attachment in the email that you received with the link. I would recommend printing that out just for you so you can take notes on there and remember some of this stuff. But use whatever's good for you. So we are going to just dive right in. What is number one on the list? Who can tell me? I'm going to see who's got the list up.
Daily time.
Oh, Miles, you're muted, my friend, but I think you said it. Daily time. Yes. Okay. So we are going to get into this. So when we say daily time, one of the best things that we can do for ourselves, and this knocks off a lot of stuff that people just shared, is what we call a calendar audit. Okay. Does anybody have a guess as to what that means? You can just shout it out.
See
Patty?
where you can take time and give time back, I guess, for other things.
Yeah. Patty, what were you going to say?
Well, I don't know if you mean this, but one of the things that I have done is I have a calendar schedule, and I go in and custom make my time so that people can't be going here, 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 here. It's here, here, and here, which then gives me the other time to do what I need to do.
Beautiful. So you mentioned Calendly, correct?
Yeah.
Does anybody else use a calendar system right now that's not Calendly, that's different than Calendly? Would you like to share what you guys use if it's not Calendly? What are you using?
Outlook.
Yeah, Outlook's great. Any other ones that you guys really like?
I use SavvyCal.
Savvy Cal.
Hmm.
Okay, I haven't heard of that one. I'll check that one out.
Yeah, that one's really interesting because you can set up different levels of openness. So if someone doesn't choose something within the first bracket of times you make available and they need something extended, you can create an extension and they can just click on the link to see more times.
That's cool. I like that.
Really cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. So thank you guys for sharing. So when we're talking about the calendar audit, right? Everybody has 24 hours in a day. So what we want to do now, I personally do this on Sundays. Not everybody is going to use that time. For me, I sit down on Sunday. I look at the week and what that looks like. Now, every week we all have 168 hours. Okay. Everybody has the same amount of time during the week. So when we say calendar audit, it is, I'm going to go into my calendar. I'm going to intentionally see if there are gaps. I'm going to intentionally put that time that I need for things. And I'm just going to throw some out. These aren't particular to me, but I heard some people that obviously have children, right? So that would be time that you want to intentionally put aside for them. I mean, how often do we actually specifically set time aside and say, look, at 6 p.m. tonight, I'm going to spend time with my daughter or my son? You know, we probably don't really do that. The other thing is true as well. So we talked about when we have that time blocked out, what are we doing in that in between? And so here are a couple tips and tricks. So number one, I always like to look at the opportunities. So what that means is that, look, if personal development is really important to me and I do that in the morning, right? I do my reading or audio or whatever in the morning. Well, if I'm looking for opportunities and let's say an appointment just randomly canceled, I can go in and use that time to set aside 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, so that I can get some of that personal development time done. So opportunities, looking for gaps or places that you can fill and intentionally plan things out. That's the kicker, intentional. So another one is time wasted. I mean, guys, if we're being honest with ourselves, how many people can go? And by the way, if you're not using a calendar system right now, that is like the first thing you've got to do. You need to get on a calendar system. But if we are on a calendar system already, how much time is wasted? Look, I mean, I heard the social media thing. Did you guys know that the average adult right now in the world spends 2 hours and 48 minutes every day on social media? Imagine if you just got 30 of those minutes back, you know, and I bet you some people in here, we're probably guilty of that, right? So when we say, look at the time wasted, how much time are we going on those social media platforms? You can get things that will help you monitor, that will actually cut you off or prevent you from going into the apps. And I think, Rathan, you said that, you know, there's opportunity to get better at that, but you've had a good experience with that or not so much a good experience so far?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah,
so
like you could choose the intervals that you want to turn it off for.
That's huge. You know, I don't know about you guys, but look, the reality is that we were not made as humans to sit in front of a blue screen all day long. It's not good for us, right? So
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Something I actually discovered is on Instagram, you could sort of set a governor switch and it'll say, hey, you've spent the amount of time that you set the governor at. It's time to close the app for the day. Now, it doesn't stop you from staying on the app, but I put that on Instagram for me and I turned off notifications, and it's actually turned into like a strange shame thing now. So like when that thing goes up, I like shame myself out of Instagram and I'm like, I spent an hour, I can't do anything more. So just something to share. It's in the app as well.
It's a beautiful tip, Miles.
I also have something to share because unlike some of you, I will stay in front of a blue screen, hence the background. So one thing I'll mention to all of you, and I know it sounds kind of cheesy, and I smell sharp cheddar among other cheeses, so moo. You could always use parental control on yourself. So with parental control, whether you have an iPhone or you have an Android, you can always set a time to cut yourself off almost like a medium oil, and you could sit there and not go on the apps so you prevent yourself from doing something stupid or wasting time. Another thing I heard, which is actually very intriguing, is I was watching a special on A&E, and they had a special about Bill Gates and his philanthropy, and one of his assistants that was speaking. And the one thing that Bill Gates can't buy any more of is time. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, and even he can't sit there and circumvent that. So really, it makes sense what everybody's saying here about how to use the time wisely instead of foolishly. And sometimes, like Ice Cube, you got to sit there and check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Thank you, Matt. Love the tech. Patty?
Yeah, the other thing that I have found really, really useful, I mean, if you're really serious about being productive, I turn my phone volume off and I turn it upside down. So I'm not seeing any of those notifications because quite frankly, there's no one that can't wait an hour or 2 hours or whatever it is to get back. Now, that's not to say if you had little children, that's a whole other thing. But I'm saying, especially for people that, oh, we just saw something come up on LinkedIn, I better go look at it. Well, no, turn your phone over, because actually, I think it was Darren Harding said, when you want to get work done, he said, put a sign on your door if you're in an office, that you can't be bothered for. He says, if you put 2 solid hours, you can get more done in that 2 solid hours than 6 hours, because the truth is once you're in the momentum of getting something done and you get interrupted, when you go back to it, you're not where you were. You're down below that and you have to start building up again. So, if you can block those distractions, and that's what I find is turning the volume off and turning it upside down. And so I don't see any of them come in.
Beautiful points, guys. So we got to be a little bit cautious of time. So I'm gonna shift on to the next topic. But again, just to kind of recap really quick on the calendar audit, I love what you guys are sharing. Absolutely. Setting those notifications, not having them set up. I mean, creating those triggers. We talked about setting an alarm or auditory or visual triggers that remind us, hey, look, I've got to get off of here. Like Miles said, a governing system where you can go into the actual app, set that time, and it might not necessarily kick you out. But once you get that reminder, you're like, oh, I've made that commitment to myself. I've got to jump now. Okay. Any last minute questions, comments, concerns before we shift to number 2? Awesome. Okay. So number 2 is work less and document or track more. I would venture to argue that every single person on this call right now would probably place time as your highest commodity, right? There's a statement to this. Wealthy people spend money to get more time back. Poor people spend their time to get more money. Okay, I share that with you because one of the most valuable things that I ever did, and I've heard this from a lot of successful people, you've got to document and track the entire day. I guarantee if I were to go into most people's calendars right now, and I've been guilty of this myself, but I guarantee if we were to go into most people's calendars on this call right now, you might have 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 hours accounted for in the day. What about the other 16 hours? Are you putting in your sleep? Are you habitually, consistently getting up at the same time every single day? These things are critical, guys. So when we talk about documenting and tracking, I want to hear from some of you guys. What are some things that you are not right now tracking that if you just put that in your calendar, it would just completely change your day? Are there any people on here that have something that they're not tracking that you want to share, Jay?
Probably my video game time.
Beautiful.
Once I get on, I lose track of time and I'll just be on for hours.
That's a big one, right? I actually was just speaking with someone the other day. A new video game came out. He was like, look, recreation, because I break all of these lifestyle areas into categories, and recreation was one of them. When him and I first started talking, recreation was number 7 on his list and priorities. A new game came out and he was like, I've logged 60 hours over the last week in a game. And I'm like, look, man, you're shifting your priorities. Guess what's going to happen? You continue on this pattern for 2-3 weeks, you're going to start to beat yourself up. You're going to get critical self-talk because you made a commitment and you're not honoring it. You're not hurting anybody else but yourself right now. So that's a really good one. Thank you for sharing, Jay. Anybody else that anything you guys want to share? No? Okay, cool. So I want to share one thing really quickly with you, and then we're going to kind of shift to the next one. But I'm going to share this one, and this one's hard for me to share because I am guilty of this myself. So you guys can help hold me accountable to this. But oh my goodness, when we talk about working, I know that there are days where if I don't have anything, like for example, like Sunday's like my recoup day. If I don't intentionally put anything down on Sunday, I will work the entire day. I'll literally work 7 days a week, every single day. And I use the excuse of, well, I'm passionate, I'm purposeful, I love what I do. And that is true. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're productive. If you're spending 100 hours a week on your career, you're not showing up in other areas. Okay. So I want to share something with you really quickly. And some of you are going to laugh at me because you've heard this before, but there is something that I call QBR. Okay. It's the Queen Bee Resource. Now, you don't have to be a beekeeper to understand this. The Queen Bee Resource is very simple. By the way, any beekeepers in here? I've always wanted to keep bees. I always think it's fascinating. Yeah, one day, right? So when we talk about the QBR, the essence is simple. A beehive does many things. They collect pollen, they produce honey, they build the hive, they have all of these tasks. But if the queen dies, the entire hive is dead. And so although they have all of these tasks, their primary resource is protecting the queen bee resource. And so what that means with us, and when we're relating this to our time, is that my favorite example is, look, when I first started to build the business, I maybe spent 50 or 60% of my time on what I consider the QBR. So the QBR for my business would be one-on-one conversations. That's my primary resource, okay? When you're talking about your life, you are going to have a priority. You want to be putting 50, 60% of your time towards that primary resource. You want to be intentional on that, but you always want to hit that percentage. You don't want to go above, you don't want to go below. You want to do your absolute best to get there. Everybody is going to have a different resource that is a primary focus for them right now. And I would venture to say that most people, this is going to change rapidly. You might have one particular point, right, that is extremely important to you right now, and then it might change. So an example of that, career might be super important, and then you have your first child. Well, now your priorities have shifted. Now I've got to of course, I'm still going to work and put food on the table, but now I am primarily focused on the child, okay? So any questions, comments on this before we go to 3? Awesome. Okay. So number 3, create the positive time flow. Does anybody want to guess what this one is? Okay. So first and foremost, you have to have your calendar set up. You have to intentionally be putting these times out. Or otherwise, this one doesn't even make sense to talk about. So once you get to that point, you have your calendar set up, you're intentionally blocking out time. A positive time flow, and a lot of people are going to think this sounds counterintuitive. Has anybody heard the statement, under promise, over deliver? That's what this concept is, okay? So when we say a time flow, creating positive time flow, here's what I mean. If I say that, look, at 5 a.m., I'm going to spend 30 minutes reading this particular book, and that's the habit, right? If I set out to have that time, and I say 30 minutes, and let's say at 5:30, my next goal or event or whatever is to have a conversation, right? And I'm just making this up right now. If that's how it looks, right? Reading 30 minutes, 5:30 stop, conversation. The conversation gets canceled. Now I don't have anything in that 5:30 time slot. What I can do is spend an additional 15 minutes reading, or I can allocate those 30 minutes to something else on my priority list for the day. Now, I do think it's really important to have 30-minute or hour intervals when you're blocking out time for particular things. If you're setting out like 4 hours for something, you're going to get burned out, right? Like that's a lot of time to be 100% hyper-focused. So here are a couple little things that can help you with this positive time flow. Number one, eat the frog. You guys have heard this concept before. This was coined by Mark Twain. It's a very simple term. Eating the frog, and this is what Jacqueline was talking about. Eating the frog is when you start your day, you focus on your number one most audacious, difficult, prioritized task, the thing that's going to get you the most results. And here's why. Has anybody in here eaten a frog before?
Frog legs.
Yeah, frog legs, right? Frog legs are good. Actually, there's like somebody selling them right down the road from me. I thought that was really weird in the middle of nowhere. Somebody's selling frog legs. But you know, the concept is if you were to like go out into a pond right now and capture a frog and try to eat a live frog, like just the thought of that is gross, right? Like a slimy frog in your mouth. Ew. So when Mark Twain said, eat the frog, what he's saying is you want to get that gross, difficult task out of the way first. You want to get the uglier of the frogs, meaning the most difficult task first. Once you do that, the rest of your day becomes easier. This appropriates positive time flow because we get those most difficult tasks done early in the day, the things that we don't want to do, right? But we know we have to do them. We get those things done, and now the rest of the day becomes easier. I'll give you the best example, at least in my world, the gym. If I can go to the gym in the morning, I know I'm going to have a good day, no question. Just like John C. Maxwell said, there are two types of people that wait until they feel like doing something to act, and people that act because they know it's going to make them feel a particular way. Okay. So moving on. So the next part to this in creating positive time flow is the weekends. And so again, I mean, how many times do we set aside all this time and we have all these meetings and we look at Monday through Friday and it's just completely booked? And then we get to Saturday and we don't have a single thing on the calendar, or we get to Sunday and we don't have a single thing on the calendar. But we told ourselves, hey, look, you know what? Sunday's my spiritual day. I'm going to spend my time on my spirituality on Sunday. And then one thing comes up, another thing comes up. We realize we're not in our place of worship. And then we let ourselves down. And then we go back into that cycle of the critical self-talk. You have to use all 7 days of the week. You have to be blocking out intentional things on Saturday and Sunday, just as you would for work throughout the week. You can set up things like recreation, spending time with friends or family, getting additional work done if you want to get an edge on the week. Set time aside intentionally on those days as well, so that when you go into your calendar, you can see every day has something. Okay. Any questions or comments on this before we move on? Patty.
I will say, like with the weekend, because my weeks are hectic, I have to spend a little bit of time on the weekends. But what I have done is I have put that block of time. I'm going to spend an hour or 2 hours, and I go in the office, I shut the door, and then I'm free the rest of the weekend, rather than coming in and, oh, I'll go do laundry and then come back and then, oh, I'll go do this. You know what I mean? So I actually commit to that time period to get myself caught up so that I can really just enjoy doing nothing the rest of the weekend.
That's beautiful. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. When you intentionally set yourself up and have that time aside and allotted for that recreation or that personal, clearing your head, guys, you need that stuff. You don't want to get burned out. It's not that you have to work on a Saturday and Sunday, but you have to be intentional about separating that time. Okay. Thank you for sharing, Patty. So moving on to the next one. This is the fourth one. This will be the last tip on time. And then I'm going to share my screen with you and we're going to go through the graph. I'm going to give you a couple more graphs and then we're going to wrap up. Okay. So number 4 is commit to less, work smarter. I heard this from not one person, but a couple people. How many times do we have difficulty saying no? I know all of us are guilty of this, right? Myself included. Everybody does this. We'll get a friend that randomly texts us and they're like, hey, do you want to go grab lunch? And even though we didn't have time set aside for that, we agree because it's our friend. We've got good memories with them. We want to see them. And then we go out, we have lunch with them. And then one thing leads to another. And before we know it, we've just spent 6 hours on a Saturday with Fred. And that was not at all what we had intended to do on that Saturday. So, and everybody's in here is like, I don't know any Freds. It is okay to say no. So I want to give you a little tip here, and we're gonna role play this. So does anybody want to role play this with me? It's a quick conversation. Our clothes are going to be on, nothing weird. All right, Matt, ready? So this is what I call the good, bad, good. I call this the Oreo. Okay. So just ask me to do something with you. And we're of course doing this off the cusp. Matt, go ahead.
Go and lick your webcam.
Wait, say,
Come
let's
on,
do something professional.
You want to kiss the frog, you might as well go lick the webcam, so.
Do something work related.
Okay. Tell me when your next, BMG is going to be.
So this is an easy one. What I'm looking for, Matt, is if basically a scenario where somebody is asking you to do something and you haven't set time aside for that, right? So like, we could go grab dinner or something like that, right? And I didn't have that time set aside for that. Okay. So are you cool with that example? Can we use that one?
Yeah, I stole your Cheesecake Factory, so.
Okay, great. So we'll say Cheesecake Factory, right? So Matt shoots me a text. He's like, hey, it's Friday night. I would love to go out to Cheesecake Factory with you. Let's go. And I'm like, well, I am kind of hungry. It's Friday night. I didn't have any other plans. Like I could totally do this, right? But it doesn't fall in line with our goals. And so we know we'll be wasting time, not wasting time because of course it's good time spent, but it's not intentionally spent. So Matt, thank you so much for thinking about me. I would love to go to dinner with you. Unfortunately, I did set time aside tonight intentionally so I can get this second book done. So as much as I'm grateful for you inviting me, is there another day or time that we could potentially do this?
No, I'm filing for divorce, damn it.
You're killing me, Matt. But you guys get the point, right? It's simple. It goes good, bad, good. So you want to thank them or ask a question, or you address the good in the moment. The bad, that's really where you're saying no. Okay. So Miles, let's do another one. Why don't you ask me for an event or for whatever it is, throw out a question.
Yeah. Do you want to grab coffee this weekend?
Where are you thinking?
That new spot that just opened up right off of Main.
Oh man, I've been wanting to check that place out so badly.
It looks really cool. I saw some great pictures. Their social media looks great too.
They got good reviews. They did. But look, I'm so sorry, man. First of all, thank you so much for thinking of me. I would, I'd love to get coffee with you. I know you're the coffee whiz. You got a coffee business on the side. So if there was anybody I'd go with, it would definitely be you, Miles. Unfortunately, on this Saturday, I've actually intentionally set some time aside to do some reflection and goal setting. This is so important for my big picture goal. And because you're such a close friend to me, I really hope that you can understand. But again, thank you so much for inviting me to this. And let's definitely set something up intentionally for next weekend. Is that fair for you?
Next weekend? Yeah, that works.
Awesome. Okay, great. So again, those are just kind of on the cusp. Thank you, Miles. Thank you, Matt. On the cusp examples. But the point is so often we get in the habit of saying no. There's a deeper element. We get in the habit of not saying no. And there's a deeper element to this. That deeper element is that we live in a fear of criticism. What is Matt going to think if I say no to him? What is Miles still going to be my friend if I decline this invitation? And so because we're on this pattern of this fear of criticism, we don't want to let somebody else down. So we just say yes, even though in our gut, we know it's not the right thing to do. Now, of course, both of these guys are good friends of mine. And of course, I would love to spend that time with them. It's not about that. It's about intentionally setting time aside. Moving on. Two other parts to this and why we get caught up in not saying no is, number one, we don't know what our values are. I'll say it like this. Okay. So Angela, can you list out a couple of your core values just off the top of your head?
Core values like self-love, stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. Like if, look, if you have, do you have any siblings?
One.
Brother or sister?
Brother.
Okay. So obviously you know, he's a male, you're a female. So you have differences there, but the values would be like, yes, you share the same last name, or it might be different now. I don't want to speak for you. You know, when you were a child, right, you might have had the same last name. And so my point in this is when we talk about the values are really what's separating you from your brother. What makes you different from him, right? What are you valuing? So I kind of was trying to put you on the spot there, because the reality is most people, they can't list off their values right off the top of their head. And the reason that's so important is because our core values lead to the conversations we have in our head, which turn into our decisions. And those decisions create our actions, and our actions create our results. So inherently, our values are tied to our results. And so oftentimes we don't say no because we're not clear on our values. For example, if I knew that honesty or integrity were one of my values, and they are two different things, by the way, but if I knew that both of those were my core values, I'm not going to go walk into a Walmart, jump on one of their bicycles, and ride out of the store with it, because it doesn't live up to my core value. The same is true when we're making decisions about our time. If we don't know what our values are, we often go against them and they don't serve us. So that's a whole entirely different conversation, and we're getting close on time. So I'm going to shift really quick. Does anybody have any questions or anything before I share the screen? Patty?
Just quickly, on that same concept, and you know, I come from that energy place. I always taught my children not to make a decision from your head or your heart, from your gut. Make it from your gut, because your gut's going to tell you, yes, I should do this, or I shouldn't. You know, our heart's going to say, oh, but I really shouldn't, you know, or your head's going to make the logical thing. It's your gut that's going to tell you the truth.
So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I think that there's a visual that I put in the other book, and this has always been super powerful for me, but it goes like this. And this is exactly what you just said. When our emotion is very heightened, our logical response is very low, meaning that we're more reactionary, right? Because we're operating off the fight or flight, off of our animalistic instincts. And so when our emotion's high, we don't want to have those conversations. We don't want to have the deep conversations. We don't want to make big decisions, because it's going to be a reactionary response. When the logic is very high, usually the emotion is lower. And so it's a more sound decision-making process. So thank you very much for sharing that. Really quickly, I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Now, if you guys can pull up your graph real quick, that's what we're going to be looking at here. So you'll notice that some people, it says, take it or leave it, leave it. I want to start with this one. So you may want to jot this down. Now, guys, look, of course, you don't have to do it on this. You can simply do this on a Post-it note. You can do it on a loose leaf paper. It doesn't matter what you use. This is one of the best organizational tips, not just for time, but for our day-to-day as well. So I would love for somebody to give me one of your goals. It could be short-term, it could be long-term, it could be related to anything. Just somebody shout out one of your outcomes or goals.
I'll say something to redo over my website.
You said redo the website?
Yeah, from the bottom and start from the beginning.
Okay, perfect. So the outcome is clear. So in this particular scenario, Matt is saying, look, I have a goal that I want to redo my website. When we're doing this chart, you'll notice that the outcome, we're really just going to focus on one outcome. There will be multiple options and there will be multiple obstacles. You do this one graph for each outcome, each desired outcome. Okay. So now, Matt, let me ask you this. What is one option for you to complete or redo your website?
Well, I'm hiring a Z to go redesign it over for me.
Perfect. So you could hire a web designer, right? Another one, you of course could do it yourself, right? What are some other ideas, guys? What are some other ways that we can get to a redone, fresh website?
Look at
Squarespace.
other examples.
I'm sorry, Danny, what'd you say?
Look at other examples. Look at other websites. Get motivated. Get like fresh ideas.
Okay. Okay. So maybe research the competition.
Mhm.
That's a
what I
good
did.
one.
Yeah, I did that.
Awesome. Any others that come to mind, guys?
Squarespace.
Squarespace. Okay. So, I mean, we said hire somebody, but like, what if your good friend did it or your brother or sister did it? So, let's say someone close to us. So here's the deal. You can come up with tons of options. Out of all three of these charts, you want to put the most energy and effort into the options column. That is the most important column. The more options you have, the better. Okay. Now, when we get to the obstacles, here's the reality. Every single person on this call knows that some adversity is going to come into your life. Conditions are not always perfect. Something is going to happen that just throws you off. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about something that is unforeseeable, or it is foreseeable, but we're going to do everything we can to avoid it, right? So theoretically, what is an obstacle, Matt, that could occur while you're redoing your website? Let's say you hire somebody. What is something that could happen through that process?
The website design doesn't go as planned.
Beautiful. Another one, and I actually experienced this one, so this is real life, but they could just disappear on you. It happens. What are some other things, guys? What are some other things? What are other foreseeable obstacles when creating a website?
You might not like what they did.
So do not like finished product.
Another thing could be, it could be more costly than you anticipated.
So too expensive. Absolutely. Are there any other ones that come to mind, guys?
Maybe you don't have the domain that you want.
That's a good one. That's a good one. So domain unavailable. That actually happened to me as well. So these are all really great, guys. And here's the trick here. So everybody can see my mouse right now, okay? So we know what our desired outcome is. Matt's desired outcome is to have a new, fresh, redone website that is in line with his brand and represents him. That's the goal. That's the outcome. The options, these are all the different ways that we can accomplish this outcome. Now, the really cool thing about the obstacles part is that, of course, we are going to do everything we can to prevent these from happening. But how much more empowered do you feel mentally, Matt, knowing that, look, these are some obstacles I could overcome? You probably feel a little better. You're a little bit more prepared, right? And it's that idea of expect the best, prepare for the worst. And so here's what happens. Let's say that we hire a web designer, okay? And let's say we're going through the process, they're doing a great job, and then they just disappear. Well, what do? You turn back to your options chart and you go to the next option. And you pick the viable option that's right in front of you and you conquer that approach. And if that approach doesn't work, what do you think we're going to do next? We're going to go to the next option. And so that's why having so many options here is powerful. Now, this is a great organization tool and I love it and I use it for my life. But there's more of a mindset shift that occurs by using this than anything, right? Now, I'm a huge believer in lists. I love lists. There's a subconscious equation when you actually write things out, or benefit, I should say. So when we write this out, if I can look, we might say, okay, redo website. And I'm like, okay, I'm gung ho. I'm ready. Let's go hire somebody. Boom. But I didn't even look at all these other options that I had to get the same outcome accomplished. So now that I can get a 50,000 foot view, I can see all the potential ways to get this outcome done. So now I'm feeling good. I'm like, look, cool. If number one doesn't work, I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different ways to get that same end result. So that gives you a really big boost of confidence. But the even better part is now that I can recognize those options, now I can look at the obstacles. Now, again, I'm going to do everything I can to prepare so those do not happen. But if they do, here's what I can anticipate might theoretically happen. And now that I can see that, I can just go back to my options chart and I go to the next option and I keep moving forward. So I keep my eye on the same outcome that never changes, but the way that I get there and the blockers for me to get there might change over time. Anybody have any questions or comments on this?
Just a comment. I think this is really interesting because this is when I'm doing like a contract negotiation and I'm preparing for it. This is almost exactly what my preparation for that looks like. But now considering taking that and assigning it to sort of like my own goals and my own objectives, that's I don't know, it's got my cogs turning right now.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, Miles, that what Keegan's saying is that there's always a what if. And I do IT for a living. That is constantly something I'm always dealing with. How many people here by the profession have to think about the what if all the time for every situation besides me? Anybody show of hands? Okay, so for those of you who have to think about the what if, there's always multiple ways to get there. Think of it like traveling down the highway. If 95 is, not available, then maybe the turnpike is available. Or you have to go down a different road. So there's always a multiple ways to get there. But you have to have that for your own peace of mind that things may not always go as planned. And by having that clairvoyance and multiple ways to get there and the what ifs and have redundancy, it'll give you more peace of mind and reduce your stress and put your mind at ease in the long run.
100%. And so another thing to touch on this is that, look, when we were going through at the beginning, how many people said that procrastination comes up in your life? Well, often we get caught in procrastination because of what? Because of the fear of failure, the fear of I might not do this correctly. The conditions aren't right. Well, when we put all this on paper and you can see it from all the different perspectives, that procrastination piece subsides because now you can get this done. And here I've just written down 6 ways that I can do it. Okay. By the way, this actually is a proprietary graph. This is something that I created, but I did it after I concluded a neuro-linguistic programming course. And so there is a neurological approach to this, but it was worded differently and constructed differently. This is kind of what I came up with. But some of you will notice on your graph, you have a different one completely. So I'm just going to run through that really quickly. We're not going to go through the whole entire thing. I'm just going to share it with you so you have it for your toolbox. So we have take it or leave it, or leave it. Okay. So this is really good whenever you're going through a transition. If you ever are moving, changing jobs, if you're going into, you're getting out of a relationship, like this is the best graph. Take it would be all of the things that you want to take that you have been previously experiencing, and you want to take those moments, emotions, feelings, situations, experiences, you want to take those into the next chapter. Okay. The leave it side on the right, that's going to be everything that you do not want to carry with you. You want to leave these things behind. They brought you down. They didn't get you the results. They were emotionally draining, whatever it is. Those are the things that you want to leave. The middle, these are the things you're uncertain of. You're not sure if you want to take it with you. You're not sure if you want to leave it. You haven't really decided yet. And so again, what this allows you to do is it's helping you to organize your thoughts through a transition. This is really good in retirement too. You're about to go into retirement. Okay. What are some of the things that I want to take with me? Maybe you really like your routine. Okay, great. Take that routine with you. Maybe there are some things that you want to leave behind. Well, obviously the work. If you're retiring, you don't want to work anymore. So you want to leave the work behind. And then the things in the middle, those are the things that you're not certain of. Maybe there's some great relationships you've built in that work environment, and you're not sure if you want to hold them or not hold them. Okay, so any other questions on the take it or leave it chart? That one's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I want to go through just a couple more graphs, and then we're going to see if there are any questions, and we're going to close out. Okay, guys? So just a few more graphs. And by the way, the reason that I love this when we're talking about organization and time management is because when we talk about lists and writing things out, again, there is a subconscious advantage. Okay. But not only that, but look, guys, I would guarantee that most people, they want quicker results. Well, if you write things out, it's quick, it's easy, and it's adjustable. You can come back and change it at any time. So another one is a pro and con list. Everybody has done a pro and con list before. We all are familiar with how this works, right? So we don't need to go through that. We talked about the take it or leave it. One last thing that I want to share with you is a word audit. Okay. Some of you guys have heard me say this one before. We talked about a calendar audit. Now we're going to talk about a word audit when it comes to organization. I'm going to share one story with you, and that's it for this one. Okay. I started working with a lady, and every time we got onto a Zoom, there were papers behind her. There were like scattered bottles. There was just stuff everywhere. She had a dog and a cat, and they were just like always running around and like tearing down the blinds. And it was crazy. And every time we'd get on these calls, she would say, I am so unorganized. I can't seem to get anything right. I keep losing stuff all over my house. And we're going to stop the story there for a quick second. I want to share some interesting facts with you about words. So did you guys know that in the English language, English has more words than any other language in the world? 750,000 words in the English language. You guys know what the second closest one is? German at 300,000. Huge difference, right? If we take this a level deeper, something that's very fascinating about this is that most of the English words, majority of them are verbs, which are short-term action words. We compare this to Mandarin Chinese. Most of their words are comprised of nouns, long-term, long-lasting, foundational things. Now, we can look at Japan, which is obviously a neighbor to China. Japan is the fastest spoken language in the world, 7.84 syllables per minute. The slowest spoken language in the world, surprisingly, again, Mandarin Chinese. And so I think that if we were to look at this, it's very interesting when we break down the dialogue and the cultures and the differences, a lot stands out from this. And so I share this with you because when we're talking about organization, the words that we use with ourselves are so critical. So back to that story. This particular lady, I had challenged her. I said, look, I'm just going to challenge you to change the words. Instead of saying I'm unorganized, just start saying I'm organized. We're just going to start there because whenever you want to change or create a habit, you always take small baby steps. And so we just started with capturing those words, that vernacular. And she just started saying, I am organized. 2 weeks later, we got on a call and she had this organizational bin behind her. She had all her stuff put away properly. The kitchen was immaculate. Both of her blinds were up for the first time. No dog or cat was running around. It was incredible. Was she a different person? Of course not. She just audited the words that she was using. And so I challenge you that if you get caught in the habit or the pattern of saying, I am unorganized, just start to shift the words and just see how it changes. Because you're changing your state of mind. You're doing all kinds of really cool neurological stuff. But at the end of the day, again, when it comes to organization, I love lists. Pro and con lists are great. The take it or leave it chart's great. The 3 O's chart, that's one of my favorites. Do you guys have any other questions or comments or anything on this before we close out and wrap up?
I had a coach that would just, when you would say something negative, he would catch you and he would say, up until now. So it's like, I was disorganized up until now, which puts that mind in, you're going to get on the issue.
I love that.
I'm just going to piggyback on that. All of the I am statements, those are incantations that we're just sort of hypnotizing ourselves with. And so if you're saying I am unorganized, well, you are, you just decided it. If you say I am organized, again, you are, you just decided it. And you could put any word after that and that will remain true.
Hey, Keegan, I have a question for you. Is that like a daily affirmation type thing?
You mean the word audit?
Yeah.
So that's a great question, Matt. A couple things. So, Miles just said in terms of the incantations, right? And so there actually is a difference between incantations and affirmations. When we talk about affirmations, affirmations are simply I am statements, or I am not, or I will not statements, right? So an example would be, I will get this work done today, right? Or I am not a liar, right? Like those are affirmations. An incantation takes that, it takes the I am statements, but then it adds the physicality on it. I'll give you an example. Okay. So, watch the difference in this. Okay. So Miles is awesome. Woo! Miles is awesome. That's the difference between an incantation and an affirmation. Okay. It uses the physicality. It uses your body. And so both of those are super powerful tools. So to answer your question, Matt, it does somewhat correlate with that. But the thing about affirmations and where it gets really tricky is that our brains are super smart. And so if you are repeatedly saying I am statements and it's not true, your brain's going to subconsciously be like, yeah, you are delusional is what you are, right? So it knows the difference. So you got to be really careful with that. And that's where I really like to differentiate, the body language in it. Another example of that is you can say, oh, I'm happy, or you could say I'm happy and then smile. It's a different reaction. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions or comments or stories that you guys would like to share before we wrap up? Jen?
All I heard in that is I'm not allowed to say I'll try anymore.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you brought that up. And again, when we talk about the word audit, using the word try is like the worst thing you can do for yourself. I understand that some things there is gray area, 100%. But when we're talking about doing or not doing something, you're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. If you say, I will try to do it, you're giving yourself an easy way out. We talked about saying no before. It is so much better to just straightforward go to somebody and say, look, unfortunately, I can't make that event, versus, oh man, I would love to be there. And then call, no show. We're talking about your reputation here. And so there's a huge difference in that. So I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you, Jen. Anything else, guys?
Yeah, to quote Yoda here, do or do not. There is no try.
That's right. That's right.
I actually have that written on my whiteboard. I look at it every day. Trying is giving yourself the option to fail.
That's it.
By not doing it. So yeah.
I love it. So any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'm going to do a really quick recap, and then we're going to close out. Nope. Okay, cool. So just to dive through this all again, guys, look, we talked about managing our time. We talked about doing the calendar audit. So I would challenge everybody on here, go into your phone, go into your calendar, look at the time that you have set aside, look at the opportunity to add other things in, and make sure that you're being diligent there. Number two, we talked about documenting more, actually tracking things, intentionally writing things down and setting things aside. Number three, we talked about creating positive workflow. So again, that's that ideology of under promise, over deliver. So what we mean there is, if I set 30 minutes aside and I have additional time, instead of jumping on social media, I'm just going to spend another 5, 10, 15 minutes, knock this out, get that positive time flow back into my schedule so I can spend that time doing something else that I do want to do. Number four, we talked about committing to less, working harder, knowing when to say no. Okay. And then last but not least, we went through the organization. We talked about a couple of charts. Regardless, when you're talking about organization, it doesn't matter how or what you use. You can use a crayon or a marker or a paintbrush or a pen. It doesn't matter. Write it down. Make sure that you are writing it down. If you want to organize your thoughts, your emotions, your objectives, write it down. Otherwise, how the heck are you going to know you're even getting there? So guys, thank you guys so much. I greatly appreciate everybody's time on here. There's some new faces. So guys, by the way, if you have any questions, I'm going to throw my email and my cell phone in the chat. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My actionable item for all of you is, again, we're talking about baby steps here. I would challenge everybody on this call to just pick one thing from today that resonated with you and implement that throughout this next week. Just one of them. That's it. Just take one thing, implement it. And I would love to hear how it goes, by the way, because I'm going to learn as much from you guys as you learn from me. So if you try something, it works really well, would love to hear about it, share it, and then we can share it with the group. Anybody else have any questions though? No? Okay, awesome. I'm throwing email and phone in the chat. If you guys have any questions or just want to reach out or connect, let me know. Would be more than happy to jump on a call with you guys. Otherwise, thank you all so much. You guys rock, and have a beautiful, amazing Thursday evening.
Thank you.
Thanks,
You too.
Thanks, Keegan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you
Thank
guys.
you. Bye.